David, how do you feel about what's going on here in terms of all the discussions and initiatives that are taken or not being taken?
Coming here, I feel more convinced than ever that the real changes are going to happen at the grassroots level. I mean, what we see are people literally horse trading away the planet. I'll do this if you'll do that. No, I refuse to do this unless you give me that. And we're acting as if it's a poker game somehow. And there's no sense that, one, this is urgent, that it's, there's no sense that surely to goodness this comes before anything economic or political. What I sense now is that while the science, I think, has made its impact, that is, there is no question about the science, there still is a belief that we can shoehorn the natural world into our social, economic, and political priorities. Well, it doesn't work that way. And if you ask me, what's fundamentally needed then is a recognition that we're dealing with our great-grandchildren's future, we're dealing with a global commons that we have to realize is far greater than our own small, immediate priorities. When I hear Alberta saying that their economy depends on fossil fuel and there's no way they're going to have anyone do anything to interrupt or destroy their economy, it strikes me that it sounds just like the American southern states not long ago when they were saying our economy is based on cotton and we need slaves to pick the cotton, and there's no way anyone is going to abolish slavery and ruin our economy. Well, Alberta sounds just the same to me.
If the global community was to deal with the issue of climate change and actually make some dramatic change, what do you think would be necessary?
It's clear that what we have to do is realize what really sets the agenda for us, and that's the natural world. The natural world has the capacity to absorb about 4 billion tons of carbon dioxide a year. Now, if we're going to be serious about reducing our impact on the planet's atmosphere, then it's clear we have to get down to the level of production of greenhouse gas that the biosphere itself is able to absorb. That is true stabilization or equilibrium. Right now, we're 50% above that. Now, we in the industrialized world are producing far more than our fair share. And the challenge, according to Stephen Schneider, one of the eminent climatologists in the world, is that the United States has to work towards 1/20th of its current carbon emission from burning fossil fuel. You're talking about a 95% reduction in dependence on carbon-based energy, which is a massive, massive transition. My foundation, the David Suzuki Foundation, is calling for a 50% reduction in total fossil fuel or carbon dioxide emission around the world. For Canada, that's much more than 50%.
We're quite intrigued. We're bicycling around Asia. We're really intrigued how the Asian cities, at least historically, have been very reliant on the bicycle. I'm just wondering if you could say something about transportation, bicycles.
When I first went to China, which was in 1976, China, with a population 30 times greater than Canada, was using about the same amount of oil and gas as Canada was, even though their population was 30 times greater. And at that time I wrote an article saying that if the Chinese aspire to a motorbike, we were done. The increase in fossil fuel use would be phenomenal. From what I gather, China is no longer aspiring to, or the Chinese no longer aspire to a motorbike, they aspire to an automobile. And the consequences of that, if they become heavily dependent on the automobile, will be unbelievable. So the future really rests on what kind of model countries like India and China follow. And I agree again with Steve Schneider, who says that if their development goes through all of the sequence, the evolution that our development went through, we're truly done, because we went through a whole sequence of the bad, inefficient, polluting industries until we became, of necessity, more and more efficient and less polluting. What we have to do is make sure that they leapfrog over from their low level of development to a high level of the most efficient, most energy efficient, least polluting technologies that they can have, and we ought to give it to them, or at least subsidize it, so they don't have to go through the process we did.
Anything else you care to add?
No. You know, we in the industrialized world are 20% of the world's population, but we consume over 80% of the planet's resources, produce far more than that in terms of the world's pollution. We are living in a time when our societies continue to demand more. Even though we are already obscene over-consumers, we continue to say that our economy has to grow for our well-being. And as long as we demand more, we have absolutely no right to tell the developing world, you can't have what we've got. But if they all aspire to what we've got, we've truly had it. Because the study done at the University of British Columbia shows that if every human being lives the way we live in Canada, we will require at least 2 more planets. So as long as we set this example, then our whole species is on a suicidal path. The challenge then is for us in the developed country to set an example by radically reducing our consumption and going towards a negative growth kind of economics. Well, that's a big shift.
Do you see any signs that that's
No.
happening?
Well, I think at the local level, there are enormous causes for optimism in that at the local level, you know, starting from the Chiapas revolution in Mexico, that's all about land and sustainability. People, when driven to desperate circumstances, will act in desperate ways. You see all over in the most deprived areas in Kenya and India and Bangladesh that civil society, grassroots groups are acting to begin to transform their surroundings. And that, I think, is the real hope.
Wait, I'd like to ask, so do you think it's reasonable to reduce our consumption or energy use by 50% or even 95%?
What do you mean, is it reasonable?
Yeah, is it possible? Could we actually reduce our CO2 output by 95%?
If we want to live in a world in which the atmosphere is stabilized, and I hope return back to a level of carbon dioxide that was, if not pre-industrial, early industrial, we have no choice. We have to reduce our carbon emissions by anywhere from 50 to 90%. If someone asks, is that possible? I would say we have no choice. The alternative is what? The alternative is a world that is much warmer, and certainly in Canada twice as warm as in the more southern parts of this hemisphere. A world in which the certainty, the reliability of the cycles of nature will be off. A world radically diminished in biodiversity. A world undergoing changes I can't even imagine. The all-party standing committee on the environment in Canada said the implications of global warming are second only to all-out nuclear war. So it's a world I simply can't even think about accepting, so we have no choice but to go for a much lowered carbon emission. Otherwise, nature will force us to.